Janet Scott, eXp Realty, on this July 3rd, right before the big celebration of our July 4th Day of Independence. And I want to talk to you a little bit about fear and failure. When I was growing up and a young woman and I decided to do some things that in my world seemed risky, my mother would ask me, she'd look at me and she'd go, "Now, Janet, what's the worst that could happen?" And I'd go and I'd rattle off what I thought were the worst things that could happen. And she'd say, "Janet, that's not the worst thing that could happen." So I began to realize that I needed to reevaluate how I interpret risk, how I interpret fear, and how I interpret failure. And so it really gave me a really good base as I grew and moved all over the country for all sorts of jobs. And even when I made the transition to go into real estate as a realtor, and then when I made the transition to leave a Lux franchise and join eXp, I always reflected back on what my mother would say. "Janet, what's the worst that could happen?" We're all hit with these fears. We all are worried. But we will not get ahead. So at the suggestion of a very good friend of mine from a business perspective, Gogo Bethke, she suggested that we read a book. It's called Never Eat Alone, which will be backwards when I put it up here. Never Eat Alone and Other Secrets to Success, One Relationship at a Time. And it's by Keith Ferrazzi. I'm now into chapter 5 of the book, and I read a passage that just brought all of this back to mind, and it's something I'd like to share with you because it reminds me of the very conversation that my mother and I would have. Ultimately, everyone has to ask himself or herself, how are they going to fail? We all do, you know. So let's get that out of the way. The choice isn't between success and failure. It's between choosing risk and striving for greatness, or risking nothing and being certain of mediocrity. That just hit home with me. I hope that maybe this little conversation hits home with some of you. Fear is a 4-letter word. Tracy Tudor's written a book about it. Don't let it drive your goal to be great.